Get ready, Staten Island. It's time to celebrate 5 years of Ferry Hawks baseball.
Friday, May 22nd at 7 p.m. it's Scout Night. This $16 ticket includes Ferry Hawks Special Edition 2026 Scout Patch. And for just $25 more, it's a Scout sleepover and breakfast the next morning. And post-game, all kids glow around the bases. Saturday, May 23rd at 1 p.m., it's Matinee Baseball. And Sunday, May 24th at 1:30 p.m., Matinee Baseball.
Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi!
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
All right, but they're on the lookout for the creeps who don't belong there, who have been trying to undermine the administration and get people out who harmed, prosecuted, persecuted those accused of January 6 offenses. They went totally overboard, and a lot of devastation in the wake of that excess. Matthew Perna, Perna, a young man who was there on January 6th, but he didn't do anything that bad, all right? Didn't hurt anybody, didn't break anything, but boy, oh boy, they threw the book at him. And at one point, they upgraded the charges to like damn near terrorism, and they literally drove him to death. I understand this. I didn't always understand it. Now I understand. He committed suicide, and given what I know now about that case, I could definitely see how that could happen, and I'm very sad that it happened. We're joined now by Geri Perna, Matthew's aunt, and Geri, thanks for being with us. You've been making a lot of noise about this on Twitter, and you've been doing a great job reminding people and telling people about all of this. How are you?
I'm doing fine now. Thank you, Greg. You have been a very loud voice for the January Sixers, and you haven't forgotten them, and that is greatly appreciated.
Well, it's an honor, but I must say I overlook certain matters, and I hear suicide, and sometimes I think, well, that must have been something else, and the word was used by the January 6 cops to kind of portray it as deadlier than it was. Just do me a favor. Tell us a little bit about your nephew and what happened to him.
Matthew was 37 years old, and he graduated at the top of his class from Penn State University. He traveled the world, and he was very intelligent. He read several books a week, and he was never all that into politics, and he was actually a Bernie Sanders fan at one time, and then President Trump came on the scene, and Matt was enamored by him, and he put all of his efforts behind getting him elected. He used his social media accounts, and he decided to go to January 6th because he felt that the election was stolen, and a bunch of us went with him. There was a brother of mine that went and some friends, and we went with him, and we listened to President Trump's speech, and we made our way to the Capitol, and Matt got separated from us. He went inside. He was in less than 20 minutes. We stayed outside. I was on the lawn at the Capitol watching it all play out. Went back to our hotel room. Matt made a video from his hotel room, and we went home. And then about a week or so later, I was sitting on my couch reading Facebook, and I saw where somebody put a link that they were looking for people who attended January 6th. And I opened that link, and there was my nephew's picture as a wanted person. And my heart sank. And Matt ended up turning himself in the very next morning because he didn't feel he had done anything wrong, and he thought it was a big misunderstanding. And the FBI didn't arrest him right away. They came back about a week later, and they arrested him. And although he didn't go to jail, he had never had any altercations with the law before. They charged him with 4 misdemeanors, the basic ones for trespassing.
Can I ask you real quick, when they came back to arrest him, how was that affected? They give him a heads up? Did they call him? He wasn't able to turn himself in? What happened?
They pulled a fast one on him, actually. I had flown up I live in Florida. I flew up from Florida to Pennsylvania, and I was with Matt's dad. And we had just left the house, and Matt was at the house, at his dad's house. And we had just left the house to go somewhere, and Matt called me on the phone, and he said, the FBI called. They just want to come back and ask me a few more questions. I said, that's not why they're coming, Matt. I said, let's turn the car around. We turned the car around, and sure enough, we had only been maybe a half a mile up the road. There were 4 FBI cars in the yard. They must have called him from the yard, and he didn't know they were out there. And they went in and they were placing him under arrest. And Matt's dad, my brother, was standing there, and he almost passed out. He was very upset. And they took Matt. They said, we're going to hold him for about 3 hours and get him booked, and you'll be able to pick him up later this afternoon. And that's exactly what happened. And they charged him with the 4 misdemeanors. And then a few weeks later, they came back and they charged, I forget if it was 200 J6ers with the felony of obstruction of an official proceeding. And Matthew happened to be one of those people. And that's when it got difficult, because they were talking 20-year sentences at that point. And, he had secured a lawyer, and the lawyer had 40 years of experience in criminal justice. And he kept telling Matt, don't worry, I've got this. This is no big deal. Matt had never even been arrested, never even had a parking ticket. He's 37 years old. So he was sure they weren't going to throw the book at him, but that's exactly what they did. And so as the months were going on, Matt was deteriorating physically, mentally. He stopped everything he did before. He stayed in his house. He'd stopped running. He stopped meeting with friends, and we were very, very worried about him. And he asked his attorney after, I think it was, December, what's the best thing I could do at this point? How can I just make this end and go away? I just want to get this out past my life past this. And the attorney said, well, you're not going to get a fair trial in D.C. I would plead guilty if I were you. Just plead guilty. You're looking at 6, no more than 12 months in a minimum security federal prison camp. So Matt he resigned himself to that being the punishment. He got in touch with a friend who agreed to watch his home, take care of his cat while he would be away. And he thought, I can help the fellow inmates get their degrees, because Matt get their college or high school diplomas, because he was very, very intelligent. That was something he wanted to do, to give back a little. And he thought he would pursue a second degree himself while he was in there. So he was prepared for this. And then he called me on a Monday afternoon, and he was just sobbing uncontrollably. The attorney had called him and told him that his sentencing hearing, which was supposed to be the following week, had been postponed, as everything in his case was always postponed. They dragged it and dragged it and dragged it out over 13 months. But they were postponing it because the prosecutor was planning to ask for a terrorism enhancement at his sentencing hearing, which would have increased his sentence greatly. And Matt was just crying on the phone, and I kept trying to calm him down. I said, don't worry, you have faith in God. God is not going to allow you to go to prison. Just, let's just have faith here. And he just couldn't hear any of what I was saying. And the last thing he said to me on the phone that day was, Aunt Geri, I'm sorry I lost all your friends for you. I'm so sorry about that. And I said, you didn't lose anybody that was important to me. And we ended our phone conversation. That was on a Monday afternoon. His dad had been calling me all week, telling me he was worried about Matt. And I was considering flying back up to Pennsylvania, and I didn't. And then that Friday night, February 25th, 2022, my brother called me and said, you're going to have to fly home because Matt just hanged himself in his garage.
So sorry. My gosh. I just, absolutely terrible. And there are people who are involved in this prosecution of your nephew who are still working for the federal government.
Yes.
And that is outrageous. And this is what we're talking about. This is what we're talking, people, accountability. This can't stand. And these people, the people for what they did should be arrested. And I bet we could prove it. I think there are components of this. Like, for instance, postponing. Why do you think they were postponing it so much? Why do you think and keeping these guys in agony, in limbo? Why were they postponing it so much?
Well, I think it was a mental torture, number one, and I think that they were just digging. In Matt's case, what did they say? Discovery, something about discovery. I can't even remember the term that they used. I think, honestly, they knew they didn't have enough on him, and they were just digging and digging for more, and they couldn't find anything because there was nothing to find. So I think it was a combination of the two.
It crossed my mind, maybe they wanted to keep this thing going longer because they wanted to milk it politically for the 2022 midterms and for the 2024 election.
Oh, definitely. And I think there was a moment when it was Matthew Graves wanted to see, was it 2,000 J6ers arrested before the end of that year? They had numbers in mind.